What up, Fightful fam, and welcome to your Fightful Fix UFC Vegas 13 post-fight edition. We're going to take a look at what Anderson the Spider Silva should do following his performance on Saturday's card. Now, before we begin, if you could please hit like, tap subscribe, and smash that notification bell. It goes such a long way to helping the channel grow, and we really do appreciate it. Full disclaimer for today's show, it's going to be a little different than usual, actually quite a bit different. I'm actually out of town right now. You're still going to get all your Fightful coverage, courtesy of me and Fightful Dave, over on the website, but I'm not in my studio today, so I'm not going to have a live Fightful Fix video. Fortunately, I had Sheehan of Severe MMA join me on yesterday's episode of 1-2 Punch, where we spent a good 10 minutes discussing whether or not Anderson Silva should retire. Now, obviously, we did not know the results of that fight when we talked about the subject, but the point stands about where we believe Anderson Silva sits in the middleweight title picture of the UFC and what we would like to see from him moving forward. So instead of just me, you're going to get me and the phenomenal Sheehan of Severe MMA, also that guy who always appears on the UFC broadcast tweet section. Check it out. And if you haven't downloaded 1-2 Punch, you can watch the live stream on our YouTube channel. Plus, you can download the podcast on most audio platforms. Win, lose, or draw. Should Anderson Silva retire on Saturday? Should he leave the UFC and keep fighting elsewhere? Should he fight in the UFC? And we can tackle it from what happens if he wins, what happens if he loses. Let's start with the easiest one. If he loses decisively, should he retire permanently, or should he go try his luck in one championship against Vitor Belfort?
That's a question I can't answer. It's like dividing by zero, it's just impossible. You can't do it. It's like, what is a retirement in MMA truly? Like what? Like, I know a few people. Cole Conrad retired, Kyle Pindred over here retired. I'm sure you can pick Mark Munoz retired. There's a few people have retired, but like, who actually retires? Like, the thing of Anderson Silva, should he retire? Like, if you want to like a big long discussion about this, my point would be, you get to say a Frankie Edgar level, right? Where you had fought for the championship, you won it a while back, and then for years you were still in the championship mix. You fought Aldo, you deserved to get a rematch at some stage. I thought you got a little bit early, but then you went on again and you fought Max Holloway. Sorry, as my microphone falls down there, and you deserved to get that title fight. It's at that point when you're, I think he's how many years is it? 9 might be too much, but it's over 5 years since he won the title, and you have done it all, and you're only going to go down from that stretch. I know he won his last fight and he looked good and everything, but you're not going to be in the championship picture anymore. For me, that's the point you should retire. When you have it all done and you have all your options exercised to be in the championship, and you know that you're getting older and you're past your athletic best, and you've had so much in cage action that it can only get worse. That's when you should go down. Not when it gets worse. Not when you get to BJ Penn levels. Not when you take so much damage that later in life it's going to hurt. And there's obviously a lot of wrestling fans listening to this. We know what headshots can do to people later in life, and even early in their life after their athletic prime. So that's my opinion on fighters like Anderson Silva, like Frankie Edgar, like Diego Sanchez, people who've been in there for a long time, putting on lots of great fights for us. I wanted them to do it for their health before they get to that point. Now, Anderson has taken a few losses. The only non-UFC champion he's lost is Jared Cannonier, so that's not bad. So is he at that point yet? He is at that point, I think. Now would be the time for him to retire. Win, lose, draw, I'd love to see him retire, but will he retire? Absolutely not.
Yeah, this seems like more, because it's weird, because Anderson has tackled this from every end of the spectrum. The UFC, Dana White first said that this will be most likely Anderson's retirement fight. Anderson at one point said no, I think he said yes, it will be, and then his coach said no, and then Anderson said not really, and now we're thinking it's probably his last UFC fight, but it's possible he actually has 2 fights left on his deal. It's chaotic, more chaotic than usual. I think. I completely agree with where you're coming from. I think, and we're teasing Mike Tyson and Roy Jones Jr., but make no mistake, they are the greatest of their time. They would still destroy most living people on this planet. And if they want to go out there and put on an exhibition show and make some money, and, it fuels them and motivates them in their lives, they 100% have my support, and I wish them nothing but the best. I agree with you. I don't think Anderson Silva's place is in the UFC fighting ranked competition anymore. He's not going to be UFC champion again. I don't know if he's come to that realization, but I would hope he has. If he wants to go and, semi-retire and do the oddball money fight against a Vitor Belfort over in one championship or something, I say more power to you. As long as you're not in a sort of a physical state the way Chuck Liddell was going into that Tito Ortiz fight, I've got no problem with guys semi-retiring from legitimate top-level competition and then doing the Floyd Money Mayweather thing, coming out, putting on a show, making some money. We see pro wrestlers do it in their twilight years. Sure, I'm not going to stop people from getting their bag, but I agree with you that even if he wins this fight, which going into it, I had more optimism than I do now. I was talking to Eric Anders about this fight, and I do believe him when he says that ever since linking up with Saif Saud over at Fortis MMA, that Uriah Hall has really put together the mental pieces of his game, which has long been a struggle for him. And I know he was he showed complete dissatisfaction, disinterest at the virtual media day. The last time I talked to him in person, he did seem to be more composed and seems like he's reached a lot of conclusions about himself personally. So I worry a little for Anderson Silva going into this fight. Although I do think he has the sort of defense to make a decision. If it was a 3-rounder, I'd actually think it would go to a decision. I don't know about 5 rounds. But yeah, I think win, lose, or draw. It's time for Anderson Silva to at least move on from the UFC.
Yeah. I would love to see him put up on a pedestal and say, "Here, there's Anderson Silva. Give him bow out," But I probably won't happen. I see the fight going the same way as you. I think this fight reminds me a little bit of, and obviously a different level, but of Yan versus Aldo a little bit in terms of I think Anderson Silva will do well for the first couple of rounds, especially the way he fights. Kind of low output, looking for shots, looking for those reads, as Dominic Cruz would say, early in the first couple of rounds. But I think if you play that fight with Uriah Hall, you're going to take a few shots. You're probably going to land a few shots as well. But I think like Aldo did in that fight, he's going to get a little bit tired. And when it comes to the third and fourth round, I think it's going to be too much for him. And I think Hall 4th round KO. That's my prediction. There you go.
Yeah, I think something similar may happen. Very briefly, before we move on from Anderson Silva, I was listening to the MMA fighting live stream for the UFC Vegas 12 weigh-ins. And E.K.C. Layden was talking about how you sort of look at the pound for pound, the greatest of all time in segments based on certain parts of their careers in which they sustain dominance. If you look at Anderson Silva's career as a whole, you may drop him down that ladder of pound for pound greats, but if you judge him only on his prime, he's on the Mount Rushmore for sure. And maybe this isn't maybe this is a view that other people don't share, but why is it that you can take a shot, do your armchair psychology here. Why do you think it is that I still view Anderson Silva as one of the greatest of all time, but I don't Ronda Rousey?
I 100% have thought about that before, because I think Ronda Rousey that way. I think people give Ronda Rousey too much of a hard time. The problem with Ronda Rousey is when Anderson Silva did it, men's MMA was at a place where it has had years and years and years of development, whereas women's MMA wasn't. And that's not me being sexist or anything, but it's getting that way. Look where it is now. It's way better. And that's because of Ronda Rousey. So the game passed Ronda Rousey by a little bit. And now you have brilliant fighters like Amanda Nunes, who beat Misha Tate and beat Holly Holm and beat the people who came before her. And even people now who maybe you wouldn't have expected out of people like Lauren Murphy and people like that, and the likes of Cynthia Calvillo coming through, and the likes of Valentina Shevchenko, brilliant. And without Ronda Rousey, they wouldn't have been there. But I view Ronda Rousey as more of a Heist Gracie or a Chuck Liddell.
Yes.
And if you want to talk about greatness, I think Heist Gracie needs to be up there in the GOAT campaign or in the GOAT talk, but not in the best of all time talk. We all know if Habib or John Jones would destroy him, but when you're talking about greatness, Ronda Rousey was a great fighter for what she did in her time. Same with Anderson Silva, same with Heist Gracie, same with Chuck Liddell, same with Randy Couture. Like Chuck Liddell would get destroyed by John Jones or Jared Cannonier, any of the guys today. That's just how much MMA moves on. The exact same happened with Ronda Rousey. So I think it's, the problem with Ronda Rousey is she isn't the nicest person in the world, I think, to a lot of people. And And this is not me thinking it. I think Ronda Rousey is lovely, but a lot of people don't, and especially media people don't like her because she refused to speak to them. That's her prerogative, in my opinion. If she doesn't want to speak, she doesn't want to speak. But her doing that got more of a negative vibe around her. So that's the problem with Ronda Rousey. But one last point, maybe on the Anderson Silva thing. I think if you wanted, and that kind of compartmentalize, I don't know what's that word?
Compartmentalize.
Yeah. If you look at Anderson Silva and how good he was, the kind of the bad parts of his career, including the drug test failure, came after he broke his leg and he snapped his leg and he lost his title. So if you want to, one thing we always say, we take people out, we take John Jones out, we take, other people out because of the drug test failures. And people take Anderson Silva out because of that. I don't think that's fair. Like Anderson Silva in the middle of his career wasn't failing drug tests like John Jones is. He failed them after he snapped his leg and he was losing there anyway. Like I have sympathy for someone who takes drugs or who gets caught for PDs and that sort of situation. Do I have sympathy for the guy who's the greatest fighter of all time and is in the middle of his career and is beating Alexander Gustafsson, Daniel Cormier and all them? Absolutely not. And I'm not the biggest. I'm more on the Luke Thomas side of the whole drugs thing. I'm just like, let them all take it. But that's my point in that.
And that is all for this Fightful Fix 1-2 punch hybrid video. Thank you guys for checking it out, as well as looking at all our coverage on Fightful MMA. Let us know in the comments section, knowing what happened to Anderson Silva in his fight against Uriah Hall tonight. Where do you think that Anderson Silva should go from here? Should he keep fighting in the UFC? Should he go elsewhere, or should he retire? We want to hear what you guys have to say. If you like the video, hit subscribe, tap the notification bell, leave a thumbs up on the video. All these little actions go such a long way to helping our channel. We really do appreciate it. And for Fightful MMA, I'm Shakiel Mahjouri. Stay tuned for everything Fightful and so delightful.